Can you hear? Yes, can you raise your hand if you can hear? Oh, there you go. Okay, so let's start. We're going to talk about what's new in QuickCapture and Survey123. Can you raise your hand if you have ever used QuickCapture? One person? 2, 3, 4, 5. What about Survey? Okay, a few more, but a lot of people have not used Survey, right? Can you raise your hand if you haven't used Survey? Okay, so we have like an hour and 20 minutes. I think it's plenty to go through the basics. What I would ask you is that if you actually have a question, just yell and ask the question or raise your hand. I will try to take questions as we go. The agenda is simple. I'm going to do first QuickCapture, then Survey. QuickCapture is a relatively new application. We released it in July this year, so it's understandable that it's new for many of you. So what's new? Pretty much everything. QuickCapture is a new application for field data capture. And the idea is to make the simplest user experience that we can for capturing georeferenced data. So instead of having a map or a form, we simply configure big buttons. And when users push the button, we get the location from the device, and we add a point at that location. It's that simple. So why creating this user experience? This is for rapid and at-speed data collection workflows. And I will define later what we mean by at-speed data collection workflows. Now, before I do that, though, I'm going to do a quick demonstration here. This is the application. The application can be downloaded into your phone or tablet, but it actually works on Windows as well. So in this case, it's running on Windows. So I'm going to open a project, and you can see that we have big buttons, each with an icon. When you click on the button, it actually captures your location right away. You can see the point right here, and now you can send it. So that's pretty much it, right? Your ability to create these buttons, as you will see, super easy to create. Here's another example, a urban search and rescue project. This was created by a team in New Zealand, and is for first responders. You can imagine they are kind of in a hurry, so they wanted the simplest experience possible. So again, you push the button and the point is captured. In this case, I got you. So my laptop is on the backstage, so the camera is over there. But this button is configured to trigger the camera when you push it. That's completely configurable. And then that is sent along with the feature. In fact, you probably saw that the feature is already gone. If you look here, this is the counter of the features that you have captured. So let's take a photo. We say done. It says one record in your device. But in a few seconds, it will be just sent to the database. And this is actually controlled through a setting in the application. You can say send it every half a minute or every 5 minutes, etc. So there you go. That's sent in now. So done. One more project I want to show you. Let's download it. This guy right here. So in this case, this one is kind of interesting because so far we have been talking about points, but sometimes you want to capture a line, like in this case. So I'm traveling, say I am in a car traveling, and I want to digitize as I drive the bike path on my right side, or maybe on the left side as well. So now we are capturing 2 lines at once, or maybe 3. And as soon as I go through a pedestrian crossing, I can actually push this button, and that one captures a point. And this one captures a traffic light. And then I push on the ECU, and boom, I take the photo, and I keep going. So these buttons are still active, and they are capturing data. So it's a very simple concept, as you can see. And that's the whole idea with QuickCapture. So why this user experience? There are certain field data collection workflows where this actually works really well. So if you think about police officers, for example, their mission is not to capture GIS data. So we need to provide them with an easy application that they can pull out of their pocket, snap the photo, capture that incident, and then back into their pocket so they can continue doing their work. We don't want to interrupt their usual duties and tasks with these GIS data collection tools. Another example is this one right here. It's for what is known as crop scouting, where you are inspecting plants along your property, and if you see an issue, you get the application, you snap the photo, and you capture an issue in your crops. In this particular case, actually, this company attaches a mobile phone to the handlebar of this ATV. And they use QuickCapture to record lines indicating where they are spraying. So they go in the ATV and they have a little cart in the back. And when they push a button, they start spraying chemicals. And as they do it, they are actually creating a line so they understand in what areas and when and what chemicals they have applied. And this is another example of at-speed data capture. This is from a company in Minnesota. It's called Minnesota Power. So they manage very long power lines, and they use helicopters to do repairs. So they have built projects in QuickCapture to help these guys very quickly capture information without being distracted. There are many use cases, like in transportation. This is a project from Colorado Department of Transportation. They have over 1,200 licenses of QuickCapture, which they use to do retroreflectivity night inspections. So they used to do this on paper. They would, write, I am in this road, this is mile 13, and there is an issue in this road sign. So by the time you are done writing, you have passed 3 signs that you had to collect. So now they go with the QuickCapture application, bam, 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 and they capture the road signs very quickly. Similarly, for the snow plows, is the blade up, is the blade down, so you create the line. This is the Minnesota Power example. You can see the projects that they created. These are specifically designed for tablets, as you can imagine. This one is from the guys in New Zealand. You can see here the dashboard. They actually have been using QuickCapture in production since November 2018. So actually, before we released, they were using it in production already. They were doing the beta testing with it. This is from a company in Canada. They are using QuickCapture similarly to the guys with the ATV. They put in the mountain bike the phone. You can see that in the helmet, they have a high accuracy GPS. This gives them 2 things, location accuracy up to 40 centimeters, but also a high rate of data into the device. So this GPS is sending data to QuickCapture at a rate of 20 points per second. Typically, in your smartphone, it works at 1 hertz, which is 1 location per second. And they need 20 per second because they are moving fast, and they want very granular 3D vertices in the roads that they are capturing. And this is the project that they created, and you can see the output of this super accurate cartography that they can create very, very quickly. They are mapping actually all the mountain bike trails in Canada. We are talking many, many thousands of miles of trails. This is another example to document the existence of noxious weeds in King County. Same idea. These guys, as you can see here, gloves, working in cold conditions, humid conditions, so they want something quick where they can capture the information quickly. So, the heart of the QuickCapture product is obviously the mobile application. It runs on Android, on Windows, on iOS. It works against online and enterprise, online and offline. The other component of the product is QuickCapture Designer. This is a web tool that you can use to create, to configure your own projects. So I will give you a quick demo so you can see. And this, I want to emphasize, you already have this. This is included already with your ArcGIS accounts. So all you need really is you sign in into ArcGIS. This could be Enterprise or ArcGIS Online. And then you go into QuickCapture right here. And this is where you create the projects. So the foundation of a QuickCapture project is always an existing feature service. So I'm going to go into my account here, and I'm going to look for my service, which I think I have here. Yeah, it's this one, bike trails. So this is a feature service that already exists. You may already have these feature services. Otherwise, you'll need to create them. This one in particular has 3 layers: points of interest, trails paved, trails not paved. If I go into visualization, you will see that the points of interest layer is points, and it has different categories in it. And then we have the trails paved, which has 3 categories: beginner, intermediate, and advanced. It's just a feature service, no big secret with this. So once you have these feature services, you can bring them over into QuickCapture. So I'm going to click on New Project, and this is listing all the feature services that I have created and the ones that have been shared with my account. So I'm going to look for my bike trails service, which is here, and you click it, and then you say next. You can actually select multiple feature services. You don't have to just go with one. So I'm going to create my project, and this is basically looking at the feature service and figuring out, oh, how many layers do I have? 3. Points of interest, trails paved, and trails not paved. For each of the layers, it creates a group of buttons. And then for every category that you had in your feature service, it creates a button. So it's a simple concept. Now, once you are here, you can make modifications. For example, I'm going to change the label, points of interest. And instead of using 3 columns, I'm going to use 1 column, right, to arrange them this way for the mobile phone. Now, depending on the form factor that you are targeting, you may want to go with 1 or with multiple columns. That's really your call. In my case, I'm going to go with for an iPhone. So I'm going to go with this. And you can play with this a little bit more. You can move the buttons around between groups. You can actually remove them if you want, the buttons. You can also select buttons and change the visual properties, like the size or the shape, the color of the, you want a border or what color you want, etc. You can do all of these things. But most importantly, you can change also the behavior of the button. So what really happens when the user clicks the button? So we all know we create a feature, right? Okay, but that's a little bit simplistic. A lot of things happen, actually. So this button will create a feature on the bike trails feature service POI layer. If I push this, it will trigger the camera. So not only we capture the point, we also send the attachment. And then here is the list of all the different fields in that feature layer. And this is kind of interesting because then I'm going to select these 4 buttons and then go into data and say, okay, in this particular field, I want, when you push the button, I want to go and use a device variable. In other words, I want to know from my device what is the speed in kilometers per hour. What is the direction of travel? So these are dynamic variables that get pulled on demand when the user is capturing the information. So this allows you to capture a few different attributes in one shot. So you push the button, but many things are happening. This one is kind of interesting. This is the horizontal accuracy. For any field data collection project out there, you should actually do this. You should always collect the estimated horizontal accuracy of the data that you are capturing. Otherwise, you cannot have confidence on how good that, is this point where it really is or not. And then the position source type is kind of interesting as well. This is going to tell you, is the GPS built in the phone, or is this an external GPS device? So you can have more metadata. And then there are other fields like a status. Well, on a status, we could actually type something like collected, or maybe pending validation, right? So you can type anything. It's just a string field. You can type a fixed value, or you can use a device variable. That's really your call. And then at the bottom here, we have the polyline buttons. So I could leave this as is, but if I do, then it's going to be a little bit. Actually, let's publish it. I'm going to publish this so you can see the default behavior of this project if I were to publish it like that. So I'm going to log in into the application because I'm going to next download the project. So now I'm going to go and say save it. So this is saving the project. And now I can go into my application and say, okay, I want to download the project I just created. So it's downloading. And now I can use it. I can actually go offline right now. I don't have to do anything else. I don't need to configure maps or anything. You can go offline. So we have the different buttons. All of that is good. Now, if I click on this one, it starts capturing beginner, beginner, beginner. I'm supposed to be moving now, right, to create the line. But then I'm going to say capture advanced. This doesn't really make sense, right? Because the trail is either beginner or advanced, but cannot be both. So this is not like the other project that we were looking at before, where it actually made sense to capture the bike trail on the right side and on the left side. So in this case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to come into my project, and then I'm going to configure an exclusivity group. That is, I'm going to create a rule that is going to determine or define which buttons can be active at any time. So I'm going to go into exclusive groups right here and say, I'm going to create a new group. You can give it any name. I'm going to call it bananas. It really doesn't matter. It's just a name. And then I need to say what buttons belong to this group. So I say this, this, and this, right? So I say, okay, done, save it. And then I'm going to go back into the application here. And this is going to tell me, right away, project update available. This is kind of important for people in the field. If anything changes, boom, you get the notification. So now I download the new project. And when I tap on beginner, starts. Now I switch to advanced. And then it switches. So it switches this one off and enables this one. Now, I got this dialog saying that I didn't have a proper geometry because we are not moving, so you cannot create a polyline if you only have one vertex. But you can see the behavior, right, of these exclusive groups. You don't need to shut it down. You just click another one, and that will actually shut down the other one. Now, this is still not good enough because I could go and say, is paved and not paved, which makes no sense. So you can actually come back into your project and come back here and say, okay, bananas, I want to also add these 3. So now these 6 buttons belong to the same group, which means that this is actually going to behave now the way it's supposed to behave. So let's download this again, open, and now I say beginner, paved. I switch to this one, and that one is deactivated right away. So there are a few more tricks that you can do here, but I think this will give you pretty much an idea of how to create your own projects. You can experiment with this. How do I add a new layer to my project, or how do I change certain properties? But it's pretty, self-explanatory and intuitive. Do you have any questions? I know you are shy, but I'm going to try. Let's see if I can get one question out of you. Yeah. Right. That's a great question. So the question is, you say the application works offline, but to use the app, I need to log in. And to log in, I need to be connected. So how is this possible? Well, let's make the assumption that you were connected at some point to download the application and to download the project. Once the project is downloaded, is locally on your device, you can go offline. But at some point in your life, you need to be connected. Otherwise, you cannot even download the application, right, or the project. So that's kind of a condition. Is that making sense? Yeah. Another question. I cannot believe it. One more. Yes. Okay, so this is a great question too. So in your case, you have a project where people go to the field on a regular basis to capture data. But you want to know, where is this data going to go? How can I integrate this data with other systems? And how can I create charts so I can see what's going on with the data that gets captured? That's a great question. Did I get your question correctly? Yes. Okay, so with QuickCapture, like with any application really in Esri, the data goes into what we call is an ArcGIS feature service, which is really like a database table that gets exposed as a web service to the applications. And if you navigate in this application through your content, you will actually see these feature services. Like in my case, is this feature layer. This layer you can use from Esri applications to, you can explore the data, certainly. You can see the data right here in the different layers. And, if you want to create charts, well, we have other applications like Operations Dashboard that lets you build real-time maps where you will see the points popping up and also charts on the side of the map to represent different things. Like you can create a chart saying, show me the count of features per type. But sometimes you actually don't even want to use ArcGIS for that. You want to use other tools. Well, these data can actually be exported into KML, Excel, file geodatabases, shapefiles, and other formats that you can use from other tools. And you can also access this data through a RESTful API. It's a REST-based API. So you can use Python scripts to download the data every week or every day and push it into a database so you can work with it. You can actually configure these feature services on top of databases, like say you have Postgres or SQL Server. You can create these same feature services on top of these databases. So when people push the button, it goes as a new row into your database. For that, you need to configure this with ArcGIS Enterprise, which is a product from Esri that lets you build this type of feature services. Awesome. Okay, so I guess, this is pretty much the basics of the product. One more question. Okay, so this great question as well. So do we create a history of the data? So by default, when you create a feature service, you can enable what is known as editor tracking, which I'm not sure if I enable this in my case. Status, let me see. Actually, I didn't enable it in my case, but you can enable editor tracking, which basically creates a handful of fields that will record who is editing the data. You see, keep track of who created and last updated features. So if you enable this guy, you say save it. Now we are basically adding fields where we are going to automatically calculate who adds the record at what time, when it's changed, etc. And basically, you don't, at this moment, you really don't have to do anything else. You can see here the different fields that have been created, right? they will be populated automatically by the application. So that's in terms of the history. It just happens automatically. And then the other question was, yeah. Okay, that's a great question too. So the question is, say I make a mistake because I push this button and I don't like this guy. So you push this one and you delete it and it's gone, right? So this option here comes quick, and disappears. Actually, after 6 or 7 seconds, it's all configurable. You can manipulate. You see, it's green. It goes to this. I cannot delete it anymore. Unless you click here at the top and then you say, oh, this guy, I actually want to delete, right? By the way, these weird lines that you see there exist because the Windows machine is getting a point that is kind of moving because of the Wi-Fi, so it's creating this weird line. The other thing you can do is, if you push the button and you click on this little guy, you can actually update the location. So yes, this is my location, but actually I want to report something across the street. So you move it and you say update, and that changes the location of that place. In terms of offline, though, the moment you come here to work with the map, this map is not going to work if you are offline. You are not going to have a map. In many workflows, you actually don't need a map. But if you need a map, you can configure this with offline vector tile packages or tile packages. So you can even take the map offline. Okay? If you want to geek out a little bit with this, of course, you can make many modifications to the project visually, like I was demonstrating, but there is this JSON editor tool in here. This exposes the actual, the heart of the guts of the project in JSON. And there are a few things that you can only do here, you cannot do visually, and it's all documented. For example, you can say, I don't want people to capture data if the horizontal accuracy is not better than 5. And if the accuracy is not better than 1 meter, then I want to give them a warning, right? So these type of properties are changed here. Or this one is kind of interesting too. You can say, if you are capturing a line, I don't want vertices closer than 10 centimeters or vertices closer than 2 centimeters, right? So you can control some properties from here. Okay, so let's continue here from a licensing perspective. As I said, you already have this. This application is included already with field workers, creators, and GIS professionals. So if you already have level 2 users, you are at this level, creator. So you already have it. If you want to really go cheap, you can actually buy editors, which are even cheaper than the level 2s. And you can buy the license for the application on top. So we have some users that, say like police is the classic one. They have 200 police officers. They are not going to use anything in ArcGIS other than QuickCapture. So they typically go with editors and they buy the licenses. And it's just cheaper, but only allows you to use that. In terms of learning more, of course, the documentation describes many of the things that I demonstrated here. And we also have a GeoNet QuickCapture place. I wonder if you can raise your hand if you typically use GeoNet. Nobody is using GeoNet. So GeoNet, if you are Esri users, this is worth actually watching closely. GeoNet is like our public forums. There are blogs and you can find tutorials and video tutorials and questions from people and answer. This is actually about the fastest way to solve many problems, everyday problems that you may run into. Okay? And we are doing a big effort in Esri to actually monitor these forums so you get responses quickly. So I'm going to ask the question again because I cannot believe you don't use GeoNet. Can you raise your hand if you use GeoNet? We have 1, 2. Okay, well, if this is the only thing you learned this week, use GeoNet. It's really worth. GeoNet is split in different groups. So there are discussion forums for, say, ArcGIS Pro. There is an ArcGIS Pro group. QuickCapture, there is a QuickCapture group. And I can tell you this, is really worth using. In terms of our roadmap, these are some of the things that we have on the works. In the short term, we are aiming for December. We are going to enable QuickCapture for use in crowdsourcing projects. So one of the things that we have heard so far in release is, well, I need a named user account to use the app. That probably makes sense in many workflows, but for crowdsourcing, it's really a showstopper because people don't want another password in their lives. So there are some users who want to use the app without logging in. You give me an activation code, which is really the unique ID of your project, and then you start capturing data. So for these cases, we are going to let people do that. You share your project with everyone, and then anyone can use it without a named user. The only condition is that you buy ArcGIS Hub Premium, because ArcGIS Hub Premium is designed for community engagement, and this is for community engagement initiatives. So that's something that we have on the works. The other one is a side-by-side map view. So some people want to see the buttons and the map side-by-side. We are working on that for tablets. The configuration of offline and online maps can be done today through the JSON, but we are going to make it much easier. And then the concept of user inputs is, say you push a button and you want to add a little comment. So that is actually supported already by the application, but you cannot configure that visually. You have to go into JSON, so these things will get introduced in the designer visual environment. And then in research, we have a handful of things that are quite interesting. Hey Quick is basically, imagine I say, hey Quick, hazard. And then it pushes the button hazard. So it's really like voice-operated commands for people who don't want to push the buttons. And this kind of connects with the watches, like the Apple Watch or an Android watch. So you can use your watch to push the buttons, not only manually, but also with your voice. And the other one is the QuickCapture AI. Yesterday in the plenary, you saw this kind of business where we can detect objects, right, from the camera. So the idea is you create an artificial intelligence model to detect the categories that show in your buttons. So then you sort of turn on autopilot, and then we turn on the camera with the AI model, and the moment we see an animal hazard, we will push that button. Is that making sense? So this actually has applications. For example, there are people saying, I'm going to use this for pavement condition. So this year, I'm going to push the buttons, good or poor pavement condition. But in the future, they want to have the camera looking down as they are driving, say, 20 kilometers an hour or 40 kilometers an hour, and the video is constantly shooting at the road. Then we can detect the cracks, and we can create the points automatically. So that's kind of the idea. If you are interested in any of these research projects, let me know, because our early adopter program is open, and we actually have people already working with us, particularly on AI with different scenarios. So that's with for QuickCapture. In terms of Survey123, this is also a data capture application, but the concept is slightly different. The idea is not to capture data quickly. The idea is to be able to create sophisticated smart forms to capture information with the application, kind of completing different responses in a form. So I'm going to give you a quick overview for those of you that have not used Survey before, and then I will really go into what's new in 2019. So from an overview perspective, Survey is really about forms, and the concept of a form is simple. It's like a piece of paper with spaces and questions where you can add data. Forms are important because it's the most natural way for people to enter data into a system, and it has applications in many different industries. The meaning in life of Survey is to help you transform these paper forms into a digital smart form that runs on your mobile device, on a web browser, or on your desktop, actually. So when people enter the data, you can send it straight into ArcGIS. There are gazillion people using Survey123. it's actually the fastest growing application we have. Like, we look at the downloads. This is the application that people are downloading the most from Esri at this moment. Why is that? Because, say, for example, for inspections, manhole inspections or building inspections, you often have quite sophisticated forms and you need to complete a lot of data in these forms. And this tool gives you the means to create that logic and to capture the information. This is American Red Cross, for example. In their case, it was not as much about the sophistication of the forms. It was about the ease of use. So they have an ArcGIS enterprise instance for the US. They have 70,000 Survey123 named users. And they use them every time there is flooding, there is a fire, there is a hurricane. They have these users use the, how do they call them, the damage assessments with Survey123. And they chose it because it was easy. People required minimum training to go through these forms. It was not about maps and projections and stuff. It's just a form. But when you submit the data from the form, it goes with location. This is from World Health Organization. They use it for polio. They have used it in the Ebola response as well. And nonprofits as well, like Jane Goodall is using this for surveys in the forests as well. So really many different uses for this technology. Some of the reasons for using the smart forms: you are going to reduce errors while data capture, because you can build logic in the forms to prevent users from entering the wrong data to some extent. You can boost field data capture productivity. You can pre-compute responses. You can quickly associate photos that you take with alphanumeric data. And also because as soon as you send the data into ArcGIS, it's available for visualization and analysis. The reason why we call it Survey123 is because really the product is about three things. We provide you with tools to design and publish the smart forms. 2, we provide you with applications to use the smart forms, applications that run on the web, online, and also from mobile devices and desktops. And 3rd, we actually have form-specific tools for looking and analyzing your own data. So I'll give you a quick demonstration so you can see very quickly how this works. So I'm going to go into Survey123. So this is a website, survey123.arcgis.com, where you can explore the different projects that you have created. So for example, this is actually a real survey that is being used for training by FEMA. So you click here and you can look at your data. Is when people are submitting data to my project. Which users are actually submitting data? Some of them are submitting only one assessment in this case, some of them 1,700. You can also look at the data that has been submitted one by one. You can drill down into every record that has been submitted. So we have a simple map view and also a table view. So you can just, as usual, you can navigate the map, you can select the records, and then you can see all the data that has been submitted. So this is actually a form view of the data with the photos, etc. What is interesting here, this photo was taken, for example, from an Apple iPad. And you were looking, this is the compass, the direction that the user was looking at when the photo was taken. And this is the location where the photo was taken. So this is metadata that you can actually inspect automatically. And then you can also look at the data in a table view. As you can see here, you can select records. You can actually filter records from here. Say, show me only records that meet this particular condition. And you can look at all the data and then say, I want to export the data, or I want to actually analyze it. So you can create a selection of all the records and then click on Analyze. This actually looks at trends in your data. It's not for looking at the data one by one. So this is, organizing the information by the task force that is behind the particular data This is the search type. So you can organize this to figure out what is going on. So, this is kind of interesting. This is a word cloud. So the more times we find a particular word, the bigger it's going to be in your selection. And you can even create maps with this information. For example, does the waypoint relate to a community lifeline? Well, this is kind of a pie chart, but you can also look at the map. Switch into map mode and represent the data with the yeses and the nos. Is that making sense? So these are built-in tools within Survey123 to look at the results of the data that gets captured from your survey. So that will be kind of number 3 in the 1, 2, 3. That will be the last one. Now, in terms of creating the forms, there are a couple of different options. We have Web Designer, which lets you create smart forms from the web, super easy to use. And then Survey123 Connect, which is like, Connect is to forms what Pro is to maps. So if you want the most sophisticated tool to build maps, ArcGIS Pro. So Connect is the same for forms. Not all of you will need Connect to build sophisticated forms, but if you really want to get into every bit of functionality, you won't be using what I'm going to use here. You will be using Connect, which is a desktop tool to author the forms. But this tool is already kind of interesting because often in ArcGIS, when you start creating your projects, you need to start bottom up. And for us, GIS geeks, that is fine. We think about the geometry types, the projections, the subtypes and domains, but for normal people, that's not the way they think. They think more like, here are the questions I want in my form. Can you create the geodatabase schema for me, right? So that's why we built it. So normal people can come in and create their own forms without having to worry about the geodatabase schema. So let's create something very simple here, like an incident report, for example. So I'm going to go and say, well, I'm interested on the date and time, of course. So I'm going to say date and time of the incident. At the top, I'm going to actually say incident report. And I'm going to center that. And then this guy, I want to actually automatically set with the current date and time. That's a smart default. So it's not a constant, it's actually a function. And then I'm going to go with single choice. This is basically a list. And this will be used to set the priority. So the priority is either high or medium or low. And the default is going to be low. And then, boom, you get it in. Now I'm going to add a multi-line text for people to enter some, details about the incident. Now, I don't want people to type in details unless this is high priority. So I'm going to go in here and I'm going to create a rule. And then in the rule I say, if high priority, show me the details. Otherwise, don't. So I'm going to preview this. So this is kind of where you get into these smarts for the forms, where you can actually build behavior into your form. And this is a very simple example, but if you have 17 pages literally of questions in a form, it's kind of intimidating. But with these rules, you can actually make it easy for people. So as they answer the questions, as you get responses, you disclose one question or the other. So you branch off. So you can see that, the behavior. So as you can see here, a lot of people think of Survey as something that is just a mobile application, which it is. It's a mobile application, but actually it runs also within a web browser, as you can see here. So these forms can be used in a device while offline, but you can also have them linked from a website in your, say the city of blah website. You put a Survey123 form for people to submit incidents or whatever. Anyways, let's keep moving here. I'm going to add a few more questions. For example, I'm going to add, of course, a geopoint question because we work in Esri, so we always want a map. But it's not necessary, actually. You don't need to pass in the location information if you don't want to. You can still publish. So this would be, I'm going to go with streets. So you can select here the map and sort of indicate what's the default extent and the zoom level. And I will make this required. I really want the location. And then I'm going to ask for a photo and also a signature. So the photo is really an image question. So you say, give me the photo. And you can also make this required. And then the signature is here. So I'm going to do that like that. And then maybe a single text. Actually, not even a single text. I'm going to pick a email type of question. So this will be the contact information for the person submitting this contact. And that's it. Now I save it. And next I publish it. So the beauty here again is that it's not bottom up, it's top down. You think about the questions in your form, the layout, the rules, the behavior. And once you have that in place, we figure out what the geodatabase schema is going to look like. If you want to go bottom up, you can do it too. You can say, I want to build a survey out of my feature service. That's fine. But this approach lowers the entry bar into building this type of forms for, again, people who are not GIS experts. So now that we have this, again, I can simply go into a link and open this on a web browser. So you can see here the questions, and I can do the signature, and I can take the photo with the laptop over there. I don't know how that will work. The location, this, and then the contact. Remember that this is an email type of question, so it's going to be read until you type something that actually resembles an email. And that's pretty much it. Now you can send data. The other thing is, this survey that I just created is only private to me. Nobody can see it. If I can see it, it's because I'm logged in. But if you go into collaborate, you can change the security settings. So here, for example, I'm going to say everyone can use it. So now anyone that has this link or this barcode can actually get the form and submit data. So in this case, when you click on this link, it opens in a web browser. But you see we have different options here. This is the link for the web browser. And this is actually the link for the native application. So I think, let me double check here, but I think I have, yes, you see I have the application installed on my Windows machine. So I can actually go here, and this is going to open the Survey123 application, and it's going to automatically download the project into the device. It's now downloading the demo. And that's the same, basically the same form that we authored in the native application. So in this case, I could actually go offline and capture data with this, because this is not a web browser. Any questions? No questions. That's right. That's right. So the question is, where is the feature service, right? It was created when I hit published. So if I look in my account, and I think I call this demo. So survey demo, it created a folder, and within the folder created a feature service and a form item. The form item defines the questions and the rules, and this is really about the responses, the data. So if you come here, and you look at the data, it's going to be empty because I didn't submit anything, but you will see that it actually has fields. You know, for every question I added, I have details about the incident, priority, date and time, contact. That's where the data goes, into this feature service. Oh yeah, so yeah, there were more things, right? There were like 3 things. So if we were to go and describe everything, this one is actually a view. So Exposing your feature services is actually not a good practice. You probably shouldn't do that. It's best to create a feature, a view on top of your service so you can share the survey with this group for editing and with this other group for read-only. If you were to expose the feature service, if these guys want to write and these guys want to query, I need to enable query and write on the feature service, which means that these guys can not only write, they can also query, and these guys, if they want to, could also write. So that's not a good business. So through these feature layer views, you basically create sort of like windows on top of your feature service, so you can control the sharing more efficiently. So just to be more specific, I am in the Collaborate tab, and I controlled the security so everyone can submit. But I can come here and say, who can view the data? Well, only people within my organization. So I save this, and now if I come back here and I refresh, you will see that we will have two views. One view for the field worker, the folks who are going to write, send data, and then I have the stakeholder view, which is for people who can read the information. So let's pretend that this is sensitive data, but I want anyone to submit, because I want only write access. I don't want to write and read. So that's what these things are, the views. And you can control in more detail what they can do. For example, if you're going to submit, you can say, can they add an update? No, they can actually only add to kind of tied in the service a little bit more from a security perspective. And in viewer, you can say, can viewers see all records or maybe only the ones that were submitted by them? So you can control these type of things. Ultimately, as you change these properties, the properties get changed in these items. You can do the same thing here. It's just more complicated and you really need to know what you are doing. But if you go into settings and you scroll down, you will see that it can only add features, right? It cannot update. And then you can see that in terms of editing, only add new features. Yeah, I mean, those are the properties that I configured from here. Is that making sense? I wouldn't, technically, yes, you can rename the folders and you can move them, but I wouldn't recommend that. There is one I would call a design flaw in Connect, which is the other tool that I didn't show here, where if you go in Connect and delete a survey, it actually tells you, it will tell you, I'm going to delete the folder of the survey. So if you have moved folders around and you have mixed things up, in some cases, because we delete the folder, we delete everything in it, the survey and whatever you have in there, which is not nice. So that's why I really don't recommend that you mess with this too much. Yeah, there was another question here. So yeah, I said that this actually works offline. So just similarly to how QuickCapture works, the moment you download the project, you are done. You can go offline. Now, will your map show? No, the map doesn't show, but all the questions show up. The location, we don't need a map to get the location from the device. If you want a map offline, you can actually configure the surveys to have their own offline maps, which is actually pretty easy. It's like copy the map along with the survey, publish it, and the next time people download the survey, it downloads two things, the form and the offline map, so you can go offline. Yeah. So this makes it extremely easy for you to configure projects that just go offline right away. Yeah. The concept is, again, download the project, you're done. You can go offline. Any other questions? Okay, let's keep going here because we have a lot to cover. We did this. Yeah, so now we are going to go into, should I? No, maybe I'm going to show you a few forms just so you can get a grasp of the type of things that you want to do. So for this, I'm going to ask my colleagues in backstage to switch to the phone. They are sleepy. I'm going to ask the guys in the backstage to switch to the phone. Hey, can you switch to the phone? There you go. Thank you very much. So this is Survey. I have a handful of projects here so you can see what type of things people are building. We were talking about the World Health Organization to work with polio. This is the survey they created. It doesn't have many questions, but you will see soon it actually does. So one of the things I want to highlight is that this form works in multiple languages. So it's one form, but you can submit data in French, in English, in Spanish, and the questions get presented to you in whatever language you select. This is not magic. When you are authoring the survey, you actually specify the different languages that you want to support, and you type in, you translate the different questions. The other one is this notion of cascading selects. So pretend I'm working on Babylon. Then the districts in this list are going to be those in Babylon. But if I go to the region of Diyala, then these are the districts in Diyala. Yes? You can actually concatenate many of these filters together. The next one is, in this survey, you are basically doing interviews in households, and you ask them, how many people, how many children under 5-year-old live in this house? So they say 2. Okay, now we present a block of questions for the child. And then you click on plus, and you start capturing information about the kid. And now you will see that it's kind of frustrating, because the more responses you give these guys, the more questions they have. You see how new questions appear? So that's control. That's all done with rules. And now you say plus, and then it goes to the top again, so you can capture information about the second child. And this is all stored in a related table. If you think about the geodatabase, right? We have one layer for the house, and then related records for the different kids in the house. And then at the end, you have some final questions that you can also complete. So that's one example. The other one is the transmission tower inspection. So this one is kind of interesting. You start with the inspection date and time, which gets automatically populated. Next, you go with the structure ID. So the structure ID, you can just fat finger the values with your, with your finger. But there is another option. You see that little button. You can actually click there, and then it opens the camera. And then whatever QR code or barcode that you have, it will actually scan it and get the value in. Survey123 supports many different formats, as you can see, of barcodes. And this is super useful because it reduces errors, right, and accelerates data capture. The next one is the photo. It's one tap away. You go, you take the photo, and this photo gets attached. Now, the beauty of Survey is that, again, under the covers, you can create rules. So in this case, you capture the photo, and then the form is retrieving the date and time and saves it in an attribute. It gets the X and Y where the photo was taken and persists them as attributes. It even captures the compass direction of your phone when the photo was taken. So you can actually have that information later on. But you don't bother the user with that. That's all happening under the covers. The other one is the structure. So I'm going to say the condition is good. Well, in that case, sign and go. But if you say needs repair, then the defects block appears. And when you come here, you can go and say, for example, let's see if this works with the echo. I'm not sure. This tower needs paint, and it's also missing some bolts. With my Spanish accent plus the echo, it doesn't really get it. But without the echo, it actually works pretty well. So you could go and send it right away. There is a description of the defects. But what if we would click here, and this represents the schema of the tower, and you say this is where the paint needs to be checked, and this is where the bolts are missing. And then you go, and this becomes part of my inspection. So this ability in Survey to create these sort of questions to capture annotations and things in kind of exotic ways is really, really powerful. In fact, the picture of the tower is controlled by the structure type. So if I change the type to that, now I get a different type of diagram. So that's another example of interesting things that people do. This one is also kind of interesting. This is a very long survey. This is from the USDA, and it has 38 pages. There are hundreds of questions in this form. So you can see that at the bottom right corner, there is an arrow. This allows me to go through the different pages in this form. But if I tap in the middle, you can actually go to, say, section 32 in one shot, and then I start bam, 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 completing this, right? So this is kind of unique in Survey as well, the ability to literally create forms that have hundreds and hundreds of questions, so you can send the data to ArcGIS. The other one, this one is kind of interesting too, is a street service report. In this one, say, I'm working on this particular job ID that has been assigned to me. This is the date and time when I actually finished my job, at 2 p.m., the service type, and then I'm going to go and take a photo. So I'm going to take a photo of the work that I did. And the beauty of this one is, if you look at the bottom, you see that the job ID is burned into the photo, and also the exact time when the photo was taken. It's a watermark. So this is, again, behavior that you can configure in your survey to bring this data into the photo. So in case that people print it or export the photo, this information is carried away. So you have some context as to what job ID is representing. The other aspect of this that I like is, say that you want to set the location where you are doing your job. So let's go to Prague. So come here, and now I'm going to set the location, say, right there. So this is automatically, now that I know the location, I can tell you the closest address. So the closest address is automatically calculated. And you can do this with a parcel ID, with addresses, of course, and other things. So it's kind of a location-aware form. The form knows where you are. It triggers some rules that auto-calculate certain values in your form. Why is this important? Because this is what really makes the difference between being effective at capturing data and not being effective. First of all, I need to type less as a user, but also as the author of the survey, I can use these rules to build business data validation rules. So I can say, use the location, and if the user is outside of this polygon, don't let them submit, give them a warning. Get the location, and if the accuracy is not good enough, give them a warning. You know what I mean? So having that control over the form is really super powerful to capture data most effectively. Let's have a look at some of the new things that we added this year. And I will go up front and say that in Survey, as well as in QuickCapture, we have a very special release kind of plan. So in Survey, we have releases roughly every 8 to 10 weeks, and we have synchronized releases. So in every release, we release on the web, Android, Windows, Linux, Mac OS, and iOS. So all the platforms are updated every 10 weeks or so. And then on QuickCapture, we actually have the cycles a little bit longer, like at around 12 weeks, but we also have synchronized releases. So Android and iOS are always at the same release. So Web Designer, what did we do in 2019? A lot of things, and here are some. I'll give you a super quick demonstration to highlight them. So one of them is this idea of pages. So you see here, you actually saw the pages already in the mobile application, but we didn't have those in Web Designer. But in this particular case, let me refresh this guy, and you'll see that this is a web form. First, what is this survey about? and then you go next, and you start answering questions, and here's the location, and you go next, and sign, and go, right? So these are pages in web forms, and this is new. You can actually create these surveys with pages right from Designer, from the web browser. So if I go into design mode, this is the actual survey. You see page 1 of 4, page. So you can come in to the very end and say, I want to add a new page. And bam, I have the page. And now I can add a question here and a question over there. Yeah, so that's kind of new. The other thing that we added this year is this notion of limited submissions, open and close dates. So if I go into collaborate, you will see if you scroll down, this is all new. So I can say, for example, prevent users from submitting multiple records from the same web browser. And just enable that. And then the survey status is also interesting. So I can say, let's schedule this survey. So the survey is published. However, I want this to only open this coming Saturday, and I want to stop getting responses on the 23rd. So if you are outside of that window, you are actually going to get a message saying that the survey is closed, right? The other thing is this idea of the custom themes. So you see here in appearance, you can actually tweak the appearance of your surveys, and you have absolute control over all the different properties. So here you can change the color of the page, the color of the actual form. If you want to come here and say, instead of submit, I want to say send, and at the bottom there is this power by Survey123, and Esri loves that, but I don't care. This is the city of XYZ, and then you put the link to your own website in here, right? So controlling this appearance is actually critical if you want to embed the survey within another website. So it's not something that doesn't look right. It looks nicely integrated. In fact, here in Embed the Website, you can see that just like embedding a YouTube video or Google Maps, you can actually play with this and embed the survey within other websites. So yeah, again, those are kind of new things for Web Designer. And we have more things, on the works for it as well. The other one, this is very interesting, this is feature reports. So here I selected a record and then I generated a report. So I took the data out of the feature service and I created a Word document with a very specific look and feel. This is super useful in cases where you need to create kind of like legal documents. Like say, I need to create documents to prove that I inspected all these 300 assets. And the inspection record actually has a very specific look and feel with the banner of the city, a table, here is where the signature goes, here is where the photo goes. So this is now possible. This is a feature report service for Survey123. And the way this works is actually pretty nice in that often when building reports, the authoring experience is complicated. Think Crystal reports, for example. Here, what you do is you author your report in Microsoft Word. And then you upload your Microsoft Word template into Survey123 so we can mix it up with your data. So it's a very flexible and easy way to create the templates. And you can request these reports on demand from the website, like you saw in here, like manually select 50 records, create 50 reports. But you can also create them programmatically through an API or automatically. For example, the classic one is, I submit a survey. You can configure survey to automatically create this report and send an email to a person. Like say, for example, I'm going to document a violation of the city code because these guys were, I don't know, building a house where they shouldn't. So you go into survey, you do your thing, you send it, and then someone is going to get an email with a ticket. You get the report, the PDF document attached to the email saying infraction. Yeah. Webhook support is also new. This has been actually on the works for quite some time, but conceptually, think about being able to connect Survey123 with other enterprise systems in your organization. And to give you an idea, if you don't mind, get your phone out of your pocket, scan this code, and then submit data. Even the lady in the first row is going to do this. No. Don't be shy. So what is going to happen is that you submit the data, and I have a process that automates the translation of your text. So you're going to add a few notes in Czech. I don't speak Czech, but I will know what you are saying. Because the workflow I put together basically takes your data, takes the data, sends it to Google Cloud, to the translation service, and then I use this information to push it into a spreadsheet. Right? So it's just an automation of a process. Finally, the lady in the first row is going to do it. So someone likes beer. As you add records, they will start popping up in the spreadsheet. Do you need more time to scan? You guys are very interactive. Do you know that? Just a few seconds, so you can actually do it. So this is done through webhooks. Webhooks are actually not like an Esri thing. They are a very industry standard way to have different cloud applications talk to each other. And I would say one of the best companies that work with webhooks is actually from the Czech Republic. It's called Integromat. So we integrate directly with Integromat. And in Integromat, you can create these workflows that, connect to databases and different services and really do amazing things. You can automate tasks super, super easily. The other company that does this very well is Microsoft. Microsoft has a product as part of 365 called Microsoft Flow. And I don't know, are you submitting data or not? You don't need to write a book. You just need to write something like, I like beer. That's all. Did you get it or not? Did you send it? Yeah? Okay, so this is what these type of workflows look like. This was created with Integromat. So in this case, the thing on the left, the Survey123 box or circle, is watching for data coming in from Survey123. As soon as the data comes, you can see that at the bottom, it calls Google Translate, and then it updates the records in a spreadsheet. And then in the branch at the top, in this particular survey, I ask people to submit photos. So I get the photo, I send it to Google Cloud Vision, and Google Cloud Vision tells me what is in that photo. Is that a person? Is that a car? Is that fire? And then I use that information to update the record in GIS that was just created. So I can search by these labels. The Gmail box sends an email with information about the record that was just submitted, and at the very top, that's just for backup. I get the image and I push it into Google Drive. Make sense? So the actual flow I created for this demo is this one. There's 3 boxes. One to watch for the survey, one to invoke the Google Translate service, and then the Google Sheets box, which basically adds a new row with the information from the survey into a particular worksheet. So this, again, this is very powerful. These guys right here are integrating Survey123 forms with Outlook calendar. So when you submit a request to schedule an inspection of your boat, it automatically creates an Outlook calendar event, so you get an invitation, an appointment to actually do your inspection. We are working with different governments in the US to automate payments for violations and stuff like that. People use it to push data into databases, to do SMS notifications. Incident with high priority, someone gets an SMS. So super powerful, this thing with webhooks. And this is, again, new. The other one is lines and polygons. This was the number one request in our backlog. So there you got it. You can work with polygons and lines in Survey. This is an animation from the web browser, but it also works on the mobile application. Along with being able to draw the polygons and lines, though, there are many interesting things, like you can dynamically construct geometries. A classic one is, I'm going to use Survey to document the location of every electric pole. And I do it in a particular sequence. I use my GPS, I capture the location of the pole, and then the next, and the next, and the next. The Survey, with logic in it, can automatically create a line connecting all the poles. It creates the power line feature automatically. And this happens as logic within the form itself. This is an example where we are not touching the geometries. We are not editing, we are not adding. We are simply adding the geometries to help people select a particular survey form to do an inspection in a building. And as soon as you submit the data, the attribute of the building changes, and then the map reflects that change. So this is also new. Photo watermarks you already saw. You take the photo, and then an expression evaluates to watermark that particular photo. This one is also very interesting. This is this theme grid. So you can see here that the layout was crafted very carefully to put questions side by side, so you can take full advantage of the real estate in the tablet. For complex surveys, this capability is actually pretty interesting. Here's another example. This is from the Oklahoma Public Safety Department. Interdiction. So it's basically, if someone carries drugs in their car, the police officer stops, brings the tablet, and this is what they use to capture the evidence. They take photos, they capture the location, information about the car, information about the person. It's actually you can see it has 7 pages. There are only 3 of them here. This is also new. This is, we call this a table list, not tablet list, a table list. It's basically a collection of questions. They all have the same options, yes, no, and not applicable. And we sort of compact them into a block, right, to save a space. And this one is kind of interesting too. This is a list, actually. In Survey, you can represent lists in many different ways. You can represent them as a drop-down list, as a horizontal collection of choices, or vertical. These are lists as well. If you look carefully at the animation, as you click on the image, the selection changes. So this is it's basically a list. It's a pictorial list. It's really an image map. And why is this useful? Because very often people completing these forms can more intuitively make selections on drawings rather than in drop-down lists. This is the new range question. So this is for integer and decimal questions, but it's basically a slider. But it's visually, in some cases, it's actually good to have these sliders instead of having just a text box where you type in the numbers. That's pretty much it. We have 40 seconds for questions. 35. great questions. So the first question is if there are any limits to the number of photos and questions that you can include in a survey. There is a limit to everything. We have been working with people that have up to 2,000 questions in the form. When you get to so many questions, I actually start asking questions about why this form has so many freaking questions. And you can often work on them and reduce the number of questions. A reasonable limit for questions in Survey123 is around 500 or so, a reasonable limit. Then if you go beyond that, you get into, it works in this Android device, but it doesn't work on this Android device because we run out of memory and things like that. In terms of photos, it's really more like storage. If you have a storage on your device, you can capture as many photos as you want. And one of the things you can configure is how much you want to reduce the images that get taken. So if you are concerned about the storage, you can say, let people take the photo. With this, it could be 4 or 5 megabytes in size, but then you can reduce it to preserve storage. But yeah, with photos, it's really a storage limit. The other question was if you can build multiple surveys on top of the same layer. Is that right? Yes. So the answer is yes, and that's actually very, very common. For example, in the city of San Diego, they have a survey for people to report graffiti. The data goes into a table. On top of that table, there is a second survey for people in the city to go and check the graffiti and capture additional information. Is this gang related? Needs to be cleaned up? Yes or no? And then there is a third survey for the cleaning crews. These 3 surveys are all working against the same table, but they have different questions. So the data can go from the citizen to the person, the inspector, to the cleaning crew. And each team uses a different survey with different security settings, different questions, etc. We run out of time, and I imagine you have snacks and things, so you will be anxious to leave. But I will be around in case you have some questions. I'll be here for a few more minutes in case you have them. Thank you for your attention.